Greetings, everybody. I'm obviously Jesus, and I'm here today to talk about how we get through the day. This has always been a sort of mystery to me, or something that, well, maybe not a mystery, is something that has always fascinated me. So for today's video, we are going to talk about that. I also want to apologize. I made a post earlier about this, but my release dates of the videos have slipped from Sunday originally to Monday to now often Tuesdays. And I just want to say sorry about that because it's just, being depressed. Like most days I don't even get up and get dressed or take a shower or anything. And I know it's like, oh, boo-hoo, poor you make money for making videos. But it's like, I don't know. It's just some days getting up and doing normal people shit and even getting dressed is a little bit difficult for me, and that is true most days for me, unfortunately. So anyway, let's get on and talk about how we get through the day. And this video is basically going to focus on the concept of the Memento Mori, which is the idea of remembering that you have to die. And that's an old, I think, Latin phrase, remember that you have to die, literally translated, that's what it means. And I don't know if this is actually true, but anecdotally, people, like great leaders, would have people stand behind them and remind them in moments of triumph that they were just mortal men and had to die. And that's where the concept of the Memento Mori comes from. And is very closely tied to religion as well, and Christian tradition, because, typically if you remember you have to die, then, you have to focus on not earthly things, but on more your immortal soul and stuff like that. So, so we're not going to focus necessarily on that Christian tradition, but this is definitely going to be a video heavily focused on the topic of, whether or not we even, to get through the day, remember that we're going to die. Because it is my theory. Like, I'm convinced rather, that not only myself, but most other people are only able to get through the day by convincing themselves that they are not truly going to die, that they are somehow able only to get through the day by putting that thought out of their minds or convincing themselves that it doesn't apply to them. I truly believe that most people, myself included, go through the world not believing that they will die in a real way. Like, I don't think that when they think about death, even if they say that, yes, I have to die, I'm a mortal being, I don't think that they truly internalize it. I think that we all have built up so many layers of internal defense against thinking about that, that we basically go through the day having a concept of death that is different for us than any other person in the world. I mean, even people who are aware, like I said, of their own mortality, I think they have to put that thought so far from their minds, or so far from the forefront of their minds, in order to basically function, that they would not be able to function without having done so. And I think that's, I don't know that this is going to necessarily illuminate anything. I don't think this video is necessarily going to, end with me recommending a course of action or anything, but I do believe that it's just a fascinating idea to me that we all go through this sort of cycle where, like, one of the most important true things about all our lives is something we have to keep out of our minds and basically fool ourselves about in order to, function as human beings. And for most people, not myself, but for most other people, you have to put that from your mind to have goals and aspirations. And in a more negative sense, you have to put that from your mind to, stomach a shitty job or deal with somebody you don't like to deal with. Like, I feel like if people truly lived in the way that people who are on their last days, or believe they're on their last days, or terminally ill live, like, you would see a completely different value system in everybody's life. But of course, we don't all live like that. We all live like, I feel like we all live like we're going to live a lot longer than we actually are, or that, everybody just assumes that they're not going to be the one who gets hit by a bus randomly. They're not going to be one who gets struck by lightning and dies. Everybody assumes that their life is going to be long, and they live basically, in my opinion, like they're not going to truly die. I think one of the things that helps us do this is how death is constantly portrayed really casually across all media. It started, of course, with TV and movies, but of course now with video games. Like death is a thing that happens to people and characters in movies for most of us. I remember the first time that I really had like a long think about how I was going to die, and I'd been playing video games for years at that point. Like I was probably, I think I was in seventh or eighth grade. I was definitely in middle school, and up until that point, I had never really internalized the thought of my own death and how because I'd seen people die on screen in all kinds of media all the time, and I had seen, I understood at that point. I think that people die, but I never really took that real concept of not existing and applied it to myself. And when I did, I was devastated. I remember I was living with my mom and my aunt at that point, and I stayed home from school for like a week because I was just so distraught with just how just unbelievable it was, how unfathomable, how unknowable it was. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what what I could do about it. And like because thinking that you grow up, and like I said 3 times now, you see death portrayed in all sorts of different ways, and it happens maybe to other people, and it happens to your character in a video game or whatever, but you never really think about it as it applies to yourself. Like I don't know, it just seems strange to me, and I think that point, like when you realize, or when you first think of the idea that death is coming for you eventually, and it's a long ways away, but compared to the universal timeline, that isn't actually very long. It's a long ways away in human lifespan years, hopefully, but again, that's me assuming that I'm not just going to get hit by a bus at any time. So, to get back to what I was saying, I think that the point at which you start thinking about death as it relates to yourself is the point at which, at least I personally, and probably a lot of other people as well, moved from childhood to adolescence. I think that's a big threshold to cross, applying the concept of death not only to other people and fictional characters, but to yourself. And honestly, I still don't know what I told myself to, pull myself together and get back to being somewhat functional as a human being. And, I do trace my sort of pessimistic outlook on life. I mean, I was probably already not in that great of a place mentally, considering my childhood upbringing, but I definitely trace a lot of my pessimism back to that exact moment when I first thought, oh shit, I'm gonna die too. That's a real thing that's going to happen to me, because it's so alien. It's so removed from your actual day-to-day life that it's so easy to forget, I think, and you willingly participate in forgetting that death is coming for you. And like I said, it seems like a long way off, because 80 years, especially when you're young, seems like a long ass time. And I think actually the male lifespan expectancy in the US right now is actually only 76. But I mean, 70, 80 years seems like a long ass time away. But I mean, like I said again, in the history of the cosmos, that's not a long time at all. Like, death is so unknowable that any attempt to really rationalize it or make sense of it in order to continue your normal life, I think employs some kind of self-deception. I think that any attempt to know the unknowable and just put it out of your mind, it requires that sort of willful ignorance, that sort of forgetting, or in some way deceiving yourself. And obviously one of the most common ways of deceiving yourself is to believe in religion, some kind of afterlife where there's a higher power who will allow your soul or essence or energy to continue somehow after death. I mean, that's always, to me, since I was very, very young, seemed so it seems so made up. It seems so made up and convenient that you get to just go, and this is just a temporary life, but oh, no worries, you get to go and live and be yourself for all of eternity. That seems like so obvious of a belief system, just giving people what they want and alleviating people's deepest fear. And that's truly, I think, the origin and the true purpose of religion, because religion basically exists to quell the conflicts that come from being like a mortal being with a finite lifespan, living on a planet with limited resources and wanting to have the best life you can while you're here, which in a closed system means that someone else must lose stuff in order for you to have a nice life. And so that's the purpose of religion. Religion basically gives people a framework that encourages them not to focus on their immortal soul, because the immortal soul is what truly matters, because that's where you're going to spend eternity. So it's a very, I don't know, it just always seems so fucking convenient that you get to, like, I mean, I'm sure this varies, but like, you get to be yourself in heaven. You're not just like a ball of energy. You get to go, and not only do you get to be yourself for all eternity if you're good, you get to see all your dead relatives. How convenient and cool is that? I mean, like, it just seems so obviously made up to quell people's most, deep fear, which I think for all mortal beings that are conscious in the way we are conscious is, the worry about their own death. Like, this is why I wish I could have been a dog or something, could have lived a short, hopefully happy life, and, not have ever had to consider the fact of my own death. I probably would have just hopefully been, euthanized when I was in too much pain and drifted off to sleep and never had to really consider anything about that. So, I mean, big missed opportunity, universe. Big missed opportunity. I would have been a great dog. But anyway, I'm more interested, honestly, in how atheists like myself do this kind of sort of self-deception, though. That's what I really like, because it's much, much harder to deceive yourself and put this thought in your mind when you don't have like some kind of fanciful afterlife to believe in, and it's all taken care of by, a religion that was in place many, many, many years before you were even born. I catch myself, as I said before, when I consider death, when I actually turn my mind to it, I catch myself automatically thinking about death as something that happens to A, other people, and B, fictional characters. I mean, this, like I said, again, does go back to, I think, how death is portrayed in the media, and I think I've also had an easy time of it because I haven't had any close family members die since I was a little kid. Like, my great-grandmother died when I was fairly young, and that's probably the only family member that I can actually remember, being there one day and then not, being there a couple days later. Like, we weren't even particularly close. I did like her, I did care for her, but, I was too young, and I don't know, she was far enough away from me that, you can just pass out of somebody's life, and, it sucks that I'll never see her again, but, it's not like a big, hard impact on my life like losing like a parent would have been. But anyway, when I turn to philosophy for, trying to look for some kind of comfort when I remember that I have to die, I always do go back to, I think it's Epicurus who said, that we are fated to miss our own deaths because, death isn't something you have to live through. You have to live through the dying, but you don't have to live through the actual being dead because you won't be here. So, I do take some kind of comfort in that. That's probably the most comforting philosophy on death that I've ever personally found. But honestly, somehow I managed to just trick myself into thinking that I won't ever have to deal with it in any way. Like, I trick myself into thinking that, oh, this isn't my problem, this is a problem for future me. But what really horrifies me is that I don't have an answer for what I'm going to tell myself when I'm very, very old, if I even manage to get there, and there's very, very limited future me's left. Like, every day, I guess, when I fall asleep, I can think, oh, death is not my problem, it's future me's problem, but it could be future me from tomorrow. It could be future me from, 50 seconds from now if I have a heart attack or something. It could be future me 80 years down the road, but I don't have an answer for what I'm going to tell myself when I'm old if I actually manage to be that way, because, at that point, I have to own it. I have to own that problem, and I have no idea how to own it. I think that right now, the only way I continue to even barely function at my low level of humanity is to say that in all likelihood, statistically speaking, I have a long time before I have to worry about this, but I do truly worry that I will be, as an older person, crippled by the fear of my impending death, more so than I am now. One of the other things I tell myself is also that I might live long enough to see some kind of life extension technology be invented, if it hasn't already, and I do think that if I were ever to go off the rails and break bad, so to speak, that it would be to steal and use for myself some kind of life extension technology which would allow me to live long enough to see the next advancement in life extension technology, which would allow me to live to see the next advancement in life extension technology, up to the point where we could digitize consciousness. And like I talked about in a previous video, that would be great, to just have a digital consciousness that could be transferred from, body to body, and basically, live essentially forever. And as I said in that video, it's definitely something I would like to do. And honestly, that is the one thing that keeps me from losing all hope. The idea that I might live to see that first stepping stone of technology that I can somehow, legally or illegally, if I have to, because if you're going to commit a crime and steal something, it should be, it should be the most important thing. It should be life extension technology that is being held back, I'm sure, because rich people are going to want it, and poor people are not going to get it, most likely. And I'm pretty poor. So, but honestly, that ridiculous fantasy of me heisting some kind of life extension technology, that gives me more comfort than Epicurus, than anything else in the whole wide world that I've ever encountered to deal with the idea of me having to die. So yeah, it's ridiculous, but that's how I get through the day. Because honestly, Memento Mori is fucking terrifying, and I do think it's fascinating that an entire world basically has some form, if not my form, of self-deception. Either they are somehow very capable of isolating the thought of death to the back of their minds, or they have some sort of weird fantasy like me. And it honestly is fascinating to me that everybody has one mechanism or another of getting through the day knowing that they're going to die, and all their achievements and life and experiences will fade away in an instant and come to naught for them in the end. And that is kind of a unique thing, or a curious thing to think about when you consider all the people and all the things they care about, and how much they do to, accomplish their goals when, in a very short amount of time on a universal scale, they will all they will all be dead. And it's kind of weird that the entire world functions this way. But for me personally, the only time I truly internalize thinking about my own death anymore is sort of in lonely moments at night when I'm about to go to bed, and, the thought catches me, and it catches me in the same way every time, and I genuinely feel like I'm remembering something that I have forgotten for ages and ages and ages, no matter how long it's been since I had that feeling previous. My heart skips a beat, and a cold chill comes out from my core out to the extremities of my body. And I feel, at that point, I can feel like it's like almost I'm having a panic attack, but I can almost feel a physical shift. I can feel my brain changing states. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody but me, but I can feel something shift in my brain. Not like my brain physically is moving, but I can feel its chemistry altering to try and guard me from truly internalizing and thinking about this. And it happens the same way every time. It's like my brain is locking itself down to prevent what happened when I was very young and I thought about this for the first time. And I can feel it happening every time. And that's the point where I say, oh, it's not my problem, it's future me's problem. And I try to, fall asleep to sort of reset myself and wake up and think about other things and distract myself for the rest of the day. And that cycle keeps going on and on. Not every night, of course, that would be terrifying and horrible, but it would be, terrifying and horrible to have to do that every single night. But there were times during my extremely depressed and sad times where I would do that every single night, and have to, just take refuge in sleep where I'm not thinking about that. But like I said before, I am truly terrified of what I will do when I don't have the future me excuse remaining to me. And like I said, this video is not going to, be conclusive or suggest any kind of course of action. I just think it's weird what I do to justify it. And I think it's also weird to think about everybody in their own in their own minds having some way to justify it as well. But honestly, the thought of me having to die and never being able to get that life extension technology, whatever it may be, it really pisses me off. It really aggravates me, and makes me angry at my parents for bringing me into this world, because as I said in previous videos, I'm very angry that I'm here because, you know, not only did my parents have a lot of personal problems that we don't need to discuss here and now, but I mean, even if they had been perfect, 80 years or so is not enough for your child, the thing you love more than anything else. It's not enough. In the grand scheme of things, it's so tiny. It's so pitiful. I would only have children, I think, if I could guarantee them a millennias of life. Because thinking about how much I get to experience in comparison to all the music and the culture and the movies and TV and the life experiences and everything that I would never be able to have past my date of death, that makes me so angry, on top of the thought that I will never be able to experience the things that I have had here on Earth again. So not only will I lose everything I've had, there is so much that I will never even begin to know. And that's why if I ever get a time machine, I'm going back and I'm never getting born, one way or another. Because, yeah, to leave somebody here not only with such a short lifespan, but to make somebody who has to deal with this problem of memento mori without the comfort of faith, pretty shitty. So don't do that. Don't breed. Be kind. Get a dog and love it, and just get pets and take care of them, and be kind to all living things. And yeah, that's my video. I'll see you guys next week, hopefully more on schedule. Peace.